Okay, morning. You can hear, whoa, hang on, let's get this set up. There we go. You can hear me okay? Super. All right, there's going to be more questions coming shortly. Just while we wait for a few more people to come, I need to wake everybody up because it's day 3, okay? So by show of hands, I'm really curious to know whose first MWC is this? Show of hands. Wow. Okay, so most of the room, that's pretty impressive. How did you guys find this room? So I'm going to give you some options. There were some static signs by escalators on the walkways. There were sticky labels on the floor. There were also our MWC colleagues with the banners. So, and also, of course, there was the app. So, by show of hands, signage. Okay, so a few. The sticky bubble on the floor that said Knowledge Zone. Yes, we've got one over here. Lollipop people. Excellent. And then app. Okay, so it's a pretty even split. Really, I should be asking this question to the guys in the empty seats, right? So those that haven't made it here. I've got confirmation bias by the guys that have made it, but thank you for coming out this morning. So my name's Matthew Strickland. I am the Market Engagement Director for the AgriTech program at GSMA, part of Mobile for Development. And I'm overseeing our current program, which is the AgriTech Accelerator, funded by BMZ, part of their fund for the promotion of innovation in agriculture, and it's implemented by GIZ in cooperation with GSMA. So we know there's a massive opportunity for digital ag solutions to improve farmer income, improve productivity, and generally raise livelihoods. But we also know there's a massive untapped market. Only about 10% of the farmers in the global south are actually using digital agriculture solutions. So there's work to be done. Something's not quite right here. And the challenge is for these developers of these digital solutions, the challenge is finding the right product market fit, the right value proposition, the right user experience, particularly in a context of low digital literacy and affordability, right? So how do we create these services that are commercially sustainable, but meet the needs of this target audience? So one of the issues is where these services are developed in isolation from farmers, as strange as it might sound. When you're an innovator, you meet with a software developer, and you come up with these ideas, there's a real tendency to leverage the latest technology or really advanced use cases, but actually they don't necessarily meet the needs of the target audience. And so, people come to us, why is my service not scaling? Yeah, where are my numbers? So it's really important that we include farmers and the target audience in our research, in our product development activities. So to unlock this potential of digital agriculture, we really need to know behaviors, the user needs, and making sure that these things are simple, practical, and actually meet the needs of the farmers, okay? So human-centered design, or HCD, it's not a new topic, but many of the approaches, many of the tools are actually developed in developed markets and used and applied in developed markets. So what we're going to talk about today is how we've been adapting these techniques, these tools, and applying them to less developed markets or low and middle income countries. But also we're going to talk about the use of monitoring and evaluation and how we're using that to impact these services or to feed into the iteration of these services, to look at trends, look at user behaviors, feed that back into the product development process. Okay, so that's the plan for today. What I will say, I know we're talking about AgriTech today, but loads of these tools, loads of what we're going to talk about is actually applicable across many different use cases and applications. So to get things underway, I'm going to ask Christian Mertz from GIZ to come up and tell us a bit about his current project, the Fair Forward project with GIZ. So Christian, please.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for the introduction, and good morning and a warm welcome also from my side. I would like to give a quick intro for the next 10 minutes on the so-called Agricultural Information Exchange platform. This is part of an umbrella project called Fair Forward, Artificial Intelligence for All. The Agricultural Information Exchange platform is funded by the Gates Foundation, and it's a 2-year program with partners that you can see on the right-hand side. By the way, if you can't see the slide, feel free to move in this direction. Might be a little bit of a design problem here that we have. Anyway, so this umbrella project is funded by BMZ, German Development Corporation, and we very much promote responsible usage of AI for SDGs. So there is a whole process going on a so-called Hamburg Declaration for Responsible AI that we would like you to invite us, and that will be launched at the next Hamburg Sustainability Conference in June. So feel free to approach me or my colleagues after the presentation if you're interested in the whole umbrella program. Now, going back to the Agricultural Information Exchange platform, let's have a look to the digital farmer services solution space. For those who are familiar with the sector, you have witnessed quite an impressive increase of the solution space in low and middle income countries. So these solutions, around about 1,400 as of today, serve smallholder farming systems. And they mainly address markets in sub-Saharan Africa, but also South Asia and Southeast Asia and Latin America, across different use case categories, ranging from agricultural advisory, financial services, supply chain management, market access, or ag intelligence. Now, if you look beyond the number of solutions and look into the reach part, you will recognize that there is a relatively low active usage and even a lower meaningful usage. So those numbers are from the Agricultural Development Program of the Gates Foundation. They did some meta-analysis, and as you can see, out of the 500 million smallholder farmers, between 5% and 17%, depending on the region, are actively using digital solutions. And there is a distinction between the community of all farmers, those who are aware of digital solutions but can't access them, those who can access them but don't use it, and those who use it but only occasionally or even one time only. And finally, there's the meaningful usage where you have beyond casual usage a perceived benefit on your farm per season. And that one is really, really low. If you consider out of the active usage 27% of meaningful usage, and you apply simple math, you come up with less than 2% in sub-Saharan Africa who are actually meaningfully use digital solutions in their daily farm practices. Apart from the limited reach, we have evidence that there is some impact. We see quite improved adoption of inputs, be it seeds or fertilizer. We see increased yield, increased income. But we also see that there is still a gender gap, with only 26% of female users among those who are reached with these solutions. And there are a few reasons for that we will elaborate here today. But I would like to explore those reasons in terms of the agricultural advisory space. So that space is still the dominant use case in digital agriculture. Digital channels to provide agricultural advice on good agricultural practices, market information, and the like. But the current landscape of these solutions are not really well designed and cater for low literacy and low digital skills group. Language barriers is an issue. Digital literacy levels are low, and most of the addressable market of smallholder farmers are not able to use the solutions. Secondly, we have a very fragmented, non-integrated solution space. So there is no seamless experience for the user that where you have bundled services seamlessly applicable. And often these solutions are made for a single purpose with limited domains in terms of value chains and the like. And then also, if you look into the information that is provided, it often lacks the contextual relevance, the quality, and the personalization of the agricultural business. So I think it's fair to say that overall, solutions are missing to provide the right information at the right time in the right format. And that's exactly what we want to tackle with the Agricultural Information Exchange platform. So with the recent advancements in digital technologies and AI, we are now at the level where we have the opportunity to provide high quality, personalized, and dynamic information, utilizing the channel and preferred language of our farmers. So imagine a use case where Rose, a female farmer in Kenya, for instance, use her feature phone to provide a question in her local dialect via a conversational interface and get an immediate answer in her local dialect. And that answer will be increasingly personalized the more she will use the system, reflecting her context, her usage behavior. And the information is stemming from different sources that are seamlessly provided by different repositories and databases. So that's exactly the use case where we are looking at and where we have now currently a few minimum viable products available that we have exposed to end users and regularly iterated with them on their feedback. So the process that we have followed started in 2023 in May with an open call for proposals where we have received more than 130 applications, of which we have shortlisted 27, invited them into 2 ideation workshops in Kenya and India, selected finally 4 final proposals, and since then applied iterative development sprints on a monthly basis to develop minimum viable products, and then get together in person on a regular base once a quarter to exchange learnings and to cross-refer components to each other. So we do every month demos of the prototypes. We quarterly get together, and now in March we also have planned with our partner of 60 decibels to do an end-user research and evaluation through surveys to the extension agents and farmers who are using the application. And in between the monthly sprints, we regularly did end-user testing with a limited number of end users, but we have exposed the solutions to them. Here are a few impressions of the gathering in Nairobi, of the consortia, and then we have invited farmers to join us and then get into the field and really tested the solution, gathered feedback, and utilized that to improve the usability of the solution. Those are the 4 final cohorts. DYNAC, mainly made of CGIAR organizations, plus a few IT service providers, Digital Green and partners, as well as Viamo and partners, and Tech for Her, made up of Dehat and Dahlberg. Those 4 cohorts look into different value chains. They apply different channels, from social media integration with WhatsApp, with Telegram, but also mobile applications, Android and geo-based, interactive voice response, SMS supported as well, to apply technologies like natural language processing, large language models, with retrieval augmented generation to contextualize the prompt of these large language models, and then get responses in local languages, including Hindi, Swahili, Gikuyu, Bhojpuri, and we're looking also for a few others. User reach, as you can see, is limited so far. Digital Green is more advanced with about 30,000 users in Bihar, India, and Kenya, and a few hundred in case of Dönag and the other cohorts. But that setup is good enough to get early experimentation. So this is
to generate a query with Farmer Chat.
Solution from
The
Digital
bot
Green.
interprets the query and provides a reply in text form, but also can be played back through a generated voice.
Using cover crops in rice farming can be highly beneficial for improving soil health.
Based on the reply, the user can provide feedback and fill out a form which informs our team on how to improve the bot further. Additionally, users can submit photos of crop pest and diseases and get care or mitigation options from the bot.
So I hope you got the idea. This was a 30-second demo of the interface. It can also be used simply with a voice interface. But as you could see, it's very simple. You talk to a bot, you get a natural language response. There are integrated services like image recognition and pest and disease management from Plantix in this case. And these are some impressions from the end user interaction that we apply. So I hope that gave you the setup for the panel discussion. Thank you for your attention. I hope we will have a good discussion following on that, and happy to follow up with whoever is interested in more details. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Christian. We're going to move from AI, artificial intelligence, to acquired intelligence over in the panel. So if I can introduce you to Elise Boutard-Gez, Johan van der Schaaf and Raphael Hara. Elise from Altai Consulting, Johan from Bop Inc. and Raphael from Casapa. If you can just take your seats for us, please. And we'll try and save some time at the end. So we'll go through some of the questions, and then if you've got some questions, we'll try and find some time at the end to answer those. Thank you. Okay, yes, these are working. Great stuff. Right, I'm going to start in the middle of the alphabet just to mix things up. So Johan, I'm coming to you first. I realise that's not massively polite, but there we go. So in my opening, we were talking about the importance of farmers being part of the research, the learning, the UX research. So Johan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Bop Inc. very briefly and why HCD UX is so important in this aspect.
Sure. So again, my name is Johan. I'm a designer and project manager at Bop Inc. And at Bop Inc. we support companies to design and scale impactful products for low-income consumers. I think UX design and human-centered design is crucial because, first of all, it helps companies to bridge the gap between what they think users need and what the user actually really, what they really experience. So, for example, if you look at the startups in our accelerator program, if you look at the founders, usually they have a tech background, so they know everything about the technology, or they have a business background and they know everything about the type of business that they're in. And from that angle, they always have a lot of ideas on the type of products, services, and the features they want to implement. And sometimes when we look at their apps for the first time, it also shows maybe 9 or 10 different key features on there. But it doesn't mean that all of those features actually really solve a problem for that end user. So we use UX research to really try and identify which of these features really solve a problem for them, and really try to focus on those and build it up from there. Yeah.
Fab, thanks. So Johan, I remember at the very start of the project, we were talking to one of our founders and having a conversation where he said, but I think this would be really valuable, and that was the whole point. Is yes, we know you think, and you're an intelligent, well-educated guy, but what do the farmers think? And it took quite a long conversation for him to come round, but now he's come round. So, Elise, from the MEL perspective, how can we better use MEL monitoring and evaluation to help improve the product iteration process?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for that question. And I think the first question we need to ask is why do some people create these agri-tech services? There is, of course, a business aspect to it. It's a business to do agri-tech, but there is also an impact. And if you want, at the end, some customers to pay for your service, they need to see the value. And this is where impact measurements come and plays a very important role. Are you really developing something that is creating value for someone? And this someone could be the end user, directly the farmers, helping them to improve the productivity, improving their livelihoods, improving their capacity to adapt to climate change, for instance. But this person could also be a government who wants to create more jobs in agriculture, who wants to have an agricultural workforce that is more skilled, etc. But you need to have someone who sees and gets value from these services. And this is where Emil is really important. Emil is going to tell you what is needed for the end user or for that customer to move along the impact pathway. And the UX research is going to tell you how concretely to do it. So typically, if we take the way you iterate a product, you would have first UX research informing product iteration, then you launch your new feature, you go in the field, you have the farmer using it, and then you need to measure. Is it solving concretely some of the problems that the farmers are facing? Is it bringing some more value? Typically, if you have an advisory service, you might see that the farmers now get the knowledge, but they might still tell you, but I cannot implement this knowledge because I need money, I need to buy new tools to implement this knowledge, and I'm missing that. So then comes the idea, okay, maybe we need to add a financial solution to the product. And this will help the farmers go from knowledge to implementing this advice and to creating impact for them. And so this is where the MEA research will be used to determine what are these needs. Then the UX research will say what exactly is needed, what type of financial solutions exactly, is it loan, is it a savings solution, etc. And this will feed the product iteration cycle.
Yeah. Just on that cycle, before I come to Raphael, so traditionally people would look at kind of baseline, midline, endline. So what sort of frequency are you guys looking at?
So it depends, but I think at the very beginning, when you are really piloting your service, trying to find your market fit, you have to do that quite regularly because you need all this information to iterate your product. And then, and we can come back to that later, but then once your product is scaled, then you can do much more in-depth research to really create very strong, robust evidence that you will use to raise money, to convince investors, etc. But at the beginning, you have to be very agile to get all of this information you need to create a very good product for your users.
Yeah, thank you. Raphael, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about Casapa and what you guys have been up to and how you've been integrating UX and product iteration.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So Casapa is a mission-driven organization, mission-driven company. And in particular, we have an activity which is to develop agricultural programs. We target smallholders. So as was mentioned by Christian in the math, there are more than 500 million smallholders. They don't basically have access to basic infrastructure of services such as capacity building, digital, access to finance, financial services, access to market. It's about 10% of them who have access to that. And those farms sustain about a third of mankind. So it's a very fragmented and very complex ground, but it's a very powerful impact lever if you manage to improve this access to those services. And that's what we try to do in our SUTI programs. So SUTTI, so that's the website suti.org. And we try to do that by combining technical assistance, low-tech or inclusive digital solutions, and impact finance. So we have programs in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Philippines, or Ivory Coast. And we try to gather multi-stakeholder coalitions with governments, corporates, financial players, NGOs, research and academics, and organize those programs with, let's say, these very various angles among that. So we developed a SUTI digital suite, which is for us a tool to address vulnerable populations, including smallholders first. And it's meant to be farmer-centric. So we do that for all of our activities. As we start with farmers' needs. For example, in agronomy, we work with industrial companies, obviously, but we take the angle of the farmer to increase the value of the farm and not only reach the targets of the industrial company, diversify income, intercropping, other income-generating activities. The same with digital. So we have developed a tool which is helping to communicate, disseminate content and information, like training content, price information, collection tools, this kind of information, but also to collect data from the farmers, both at their initial entering into the program, but also all along the way to make sure that the change of practices that we recommend have impact on their revenues, access to capacity building, and also social inclusion. So the way we work to include that is that we start generally with a diagnosis with NGOs, special experts of, let's say, community management and social processes. Then we design the content and organize crash tests before really going to the MVP of each of the programs. And then we organize pilots, adapt, and once it's done, we can go to scale and implement the program. So it's quite a long initial phase of about a year, but at least we have time to adjust and really take farmers' feedbacks in the process.
Brilliant. Thanks, Raphael. Yeah, this time to reflect and adjust is perhaps a luxury that some agri-tech developers don't have. So I want to come back to Johan and ask, I think we've hammered home the need for UX and the importance of UX, but what are the challenges, particularly in low and middle income countries, for implementing UX in your workflow?
So for the companies that we work with, obviously a lot of them, they lack in-house designers. You can imagine if you have a tech startup, the first thing you want to do is build the solution and put it on the market. So development always comes first, is what we see, and I think that also makes sense. And then the challenge with that is that sometimes they will have built quite a large solution. So for example, if you have an ERP system with a lot of different features that are all interconnected, and you start to do user testing, and you realize that you might need to change a couple of things, then it can be quite difficult for an early stage company to do quite a large design overhaul. So sometimes we have to be really strategic in deciding when we can implement which type of changes, and kind of strategically map that on a roadmap so they can use the resources in the most efficient way possible. And then the second one is it can be difficult to really contextualize the solution to the end user, especially if you're entering a new market. Because especially in the context of low and middle income countries, the levels of connectivity, the prices of mobile data, they can be vastly different. And more importantly, or at least for me as a designer, the levels of digital literacy are completely different. So for example, I think everybody in the room here owns a smartphone, I assume so, and maybe you replace that smartphone every 1, 2, 3, so many years. But for the people that we're sometimes designing for, they can use a feature phone or a button phone now, skip 15 generations of smartphones, and that's when they'll have their first smartphone. So obviously their expectations and their experience with digital technology is completely different, and we really have to take that context into mind to design a user-centered solution for them. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then coming to Elise, and from the MEL perspective, the challenges agri-techs or developers might face in, again, integrating this sort of more cyclical or frequent feedback process?
Yeah, I think if I had a few advice to give to them, that would be, first be humble and try to be cost effective when you collect your data. You do it at a moment where you already have to develop a product. You have limited human resources, limited financial resources, and MEL doesn't have to be very big, very ambitious research, especially at this stage of the product development. So you have to first select what type of data, what is the data you absolutely need, and don't try to track KPIs that are not of interest to you at the moment you are conducting this research. Also, in terms of the sample sizes you're working with, you are at a stage of the product development where will it really make a difference whether you have 2 or 3% margin of error on your KPIs? Will you take a different strategic decision if the answer to whether farmers prefer to use IVR or SMS is 75 or 80%? So you have to be very humble and not too ambitious. You can work with small sample sizes, 200, 300, 500, if you want to have some data disaggregated by some segments, but don't look for too ambitious research. You can also use digital tools. You don't have to go with face-to-face research, which is quite expensive. You can use phone-based research. It's also very efficient. So that would be my first thing, only collect what you need and be cost effective in what you collect. The second one, and this is a challenge when you try to do monitoring and evaluation on such early stage services, is that you are working with a moving target. You are working with a service, first you do a first research, it's in one region, and you have feature A and B that are live, and then 6 months later, the user base is in another region, and they are using all the feature. This is because of the work of the UX, you have iterated your products. But this makes it difficult to measure impact, because you are trying to measure differences between groups that are not similar. But this is not necessarily an issue. It's not an issue. You just have to be very agile in the way you interpret your data, because what you are looking for at this stage of your product development is emerging trends that your product is making an impact. You're not looking at doing an RCT. You're not looking at publishing in a research paper. So that's enough for the stage you're at. And finally, I would say some of the challenges that these services may face are the very logistical challenges of conducting research. As Johan mentioned, not all of them will have network. They might have network where they live, but not where they work when they are in the field. So this is a challenge. Christian mentioned as well the different dialects in which you have to conduct the research. You have some concepts that are very difficult to translate. Climate change in some specific dialects might be a difficult concept to explain to farmers when you conduct your research. So these are all the small, more logistical things you need to take into account so that you can still measure impact at this stage of your product development.
Yeah, great. And just to add on to that, so we've obviously done a few surveys together over the years, and even getting the data out of the system can be a challenge, especially if when they've set the system or the database up, it hasn't been built with a view to doing surveys and knowing what they're going to measure further down the road. So just to add on to that, Raphael, with your implementations and your instances, what's kind of surprised you guys most when you've been rolling things out from the plan that was in the head and the reality you find on the ground, and how have you adapted?
Yeah, thanks a lot. We tried to have a quite adaptive approach and develop a solution that was both adapted to any web surfing phone, not only smartphones, not only up-to-date smartphones, but all kind of smartphones, even the old ones, and including feature phones that can surf on the web, but that also works offline, that you can collect data or just go to your training content offline, illiterate friendly as well. So we tried to be quite farmer-centric from the beginning, because we had in the team people who had been working in agricultural development programs for 20 years, so we knew what the kind of context in which we were. But it's true that to each case you have to adapt, and each country or even if each program has its own challenges. So for example, when we started in Indonesia, our first program with Michelin on rubber, natural rubber, at some point we were like, okay, but 15% of digital adoption with everything we do is quite low. And then we understood that they were afraid, farmers were afraid that we would collect data for the government. So we went and we had the guys from Michelin come and explain that we needed those data to make sure that our impact was good and that we could extend to a larger, to go to scale, and we have done that later on, to be able to understand what is the impact of what we do. If it's worthless, then let's not do it again. In Sri Lanka, on the contrary, the fact that the government, we have a MOU with the government, and the government gives licenses to give you the right to operate, the license to operate, it was very powerful. So it was exactly the opposite, but we had other challenges of digital adoption, which is lower than in Indonesia, and also some text-to-speech challenges, such as some words were, let's say, said by in a way that meant other things. So latex basically meant something that politeness would not allow me to repeat, but mostly linked to making babies. So all this stuff you need to adapt on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick pre-warning. We're going to come to the audience for questions in a few minutes, so get those grey cells going. But everybody in our department and when you're looking at LMCs is talking about scale. So it's a word that comes up all the time, very regularly, and is obviously something that AgriTechs are chasing as well. So from the work that you, Johan, have done with the accelerator, are there any examples there that you can talk about in terms of how they have adapted or started on that journey towards scale?
Yeah, sure. There's one example of our cohort member, Greenovator. They're based in Myanmar, and what they do is they basically have like a social media or like a community platform for farmers where they can get farm advisory from other farmers, talk to other farmers about market dynamics, where to get inputs, all these kind of things. And they wanted to scale into Cambodia. Cambodia, the local language is Khmer. Khmer has about 74 different characters, so the Khmer alphabet. So it's a bit more complex than the English alphabet, and for less literate users, it can be quite difficult to read. So what they figured out through UX research is that a lot of the people there, they actually use much more voice messages to communicate with each other. So what they did is they included text to audio or text to speech functionality on the app, and it allowed them to scale successfully into Cambodia. So that's a nice example, I think, where they really adapted to the local context, and that helped them to enter the market. Yeah.
And then just before I let you off the hook, in terms of the technique, so the Bopping toolkit, if you like, that you go and deploy when you go in to meet these companies. Are there any tools that you've had to adapt on the fly, or when you're in country that you've had to adapt based on the local conditions or the situation you find yourself in?
Yeah, of course. So basically, we support 10 different companies, and we basically have kind of a more or less standard playbook in terms of how we do that. So maybe just to explain a little bit how that works, me or our local colleagues, we visit a company, and we basically, we call it a product iteration workshop. We visit them for 1 week, and through those 5 days, we try to go through an entire design sprint. So the goal is that at the start of the week, you have one version of your product, and by the end of the week, ideally by Friday 5 p.m., you have an improved version of that product. It's not always finished by Friday 5 p.m. There's usually some follow-up work involved, but that's more or less the structure. Then we usually do a couple of days of research in the field. So we do like semi-structured interviews or focus group discussions. We do the consolidation of the insights together with the whole team. And then we try to do as much design work as possible with, if they have it, an in-house designer or their development team. But of course, for any company, there's always local challenges that we face, and we also have to adapt our tools. Our tools quite a bit. So, and a lot of them are also focused on. Are changed because of the capabilities of the startup. So if you have a startup that may not be able to implement all of the changes, then we've worked on having a tool that allows us to basically create a UX roadmap that will help them to decide when can I implement which changes in my startup journey, so to say. So maybe there's a couple of changes that I can make on the short and immediate term, and maybe somewhere longer down the line I have to look more at the more full overhaul of the design. So that's, for example, one of the tools that we came up with during the PIWs. That has helped the companies.
Thank you. So, Elise, we've talked about MEL for kind of internal review and product iteration and improving the product. But looking externally, the use of MEL for kind of telling the impact story, raising investment, how can AgriTechs better do that? Or do that better, I should say.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, in a market like AgriTech, especially in low and middle income countries, the first investors you will have, it's risky. It's not a market that is mature yet. And so the first investors that will be ready to invest in your products are investors that are very conscious about the impact. And so these people, you will need to convince them that you are actually making an impact. And even further down the line, as you are looking at purely private investors, PE funds, etc., which historically used to be very much business-oriented, increasingly now, they are also looking at impact. This triple bottom line, economic, social, environmental impact is becoming increasingly important for them as well. Many of them are developing, they call it impact roadmap, impact, but ultimately it's MEL. It's how the investment that they are making are going to make an impact. Of course, they are looking for financial returns, but they are also looking for other types of return. So the same way you should be able to pitch your product, your business model, you should also be able to pitch what is your impact story. And this is where MEL, all the MEL tools are very helpful. Historically, if you talk to many very business people, MEL is something they don't know. It's something that comes from the development world. It has a lot of jargon. It's a bit boring, that's what people think. But it's actually super important and is becoming increasingly important. Maybe the MEL people, we need to make the jargon more accessible to everyone. But ultimately, this is what you want to do. You want to show how your product is making a difference and why someone should pay for it, and this is where you make the link with the financial return.
Yeah, I've definitely seen when we've been talking to people, and as soon as you mention theory of change, the eyes roll and they glaze over. So we've gone down the route of calling it impact roadmap to make it a bit more. What's the word I could use? But a bit more interesting, let's say. Sure. Okay, and then Raphael. So in terms of scale and impact, how does that conversation sort of materialize when you're talking about Suti and with your clients and with the farmers you're working with?
Yeah, so obviously everything we do is linked to impact. So our target is to bring impact at scale. So in our work with our clients and partners from government and etc., we try to have the best cost to impact. So for the moment, what we achieve is cost to impact of about 1 to 25 or up to 1 to 40 on a decade approach, meaning that every euro invested after the initial phases of piloting, and I'm not talking about the initial programs, but when we go to scale, when a euro is invested or a dollar, we have firm or let's say solid reasons to believe that it will create $25 to $40 in a decade. And that's how we organize also this with this target in mind, the gradual journey for farmers who are sometimes illiterate, in all cases mostly, except maybe for young farmers, but there are not that many digital illiterates. And we try to bring a multi-dimensional impact. We don't target a specific impact. For example, if you think only about yield and you don't think about the global net income that farmers will... Lots of government programs were targeting yield, and it did not work because they were only targeting increase of yield, but entrance or inputs were so costly that it could not work. Same if you think about industrial companies having their own sustainability programs. If they don't take the angle of the farmers, it does not work because it's only about one commodity. Even if it's the main one, it's not the only thing that they do. And this multidimensional impact needs to be measured. So I think Lise and Joan mentioned that as well. The type of multi-stakeholder coalition we gather, there are some government, NGOs, researchers, academics, corporates, investors. I mean, if you don't have a solid impact approach to measure and show that what you do is powerful, it's impossible to keep that different agendas aligned on the long term. So impact measurement is really the cement of it. And of course, when you collect data from farmers, I mean, it's people who, it's already very complicated to collect data in any case, but from farmers it's even more complicated. So then we develop some data science processes to, let's say, spot outliers, have routine confirmation, make sure that what we measure and the KPIs on impact, such as access to capacity building, access to digital, increase of and diversification of revenues, social inclusion, GHG emissions decrease, these kind of things, are based on, let's say, solid ground.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, I am going to look into the crowd and see if there's any hands that want to go up and ask our experts some questions. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Somewhat long-winded question, so maybe I'll try to cut it back a little bit. But it's based on my experience. I lived for a long time in Peru and working in the regulatory space in telecoms. And I'll keep it to one anecdote, okay? When they started to bring computer centers, internet access points to the rural villages in the late 90s, early 2000s. Okay, they would go up, and back in those days, everybody was still using mice as the controller for the devices, and mobile phones were not yet really data apparatuses yet. And they would take these devices and they would park them in the villages, and there would be a center for people to use the computer. And then they would send a team in a month later, and they'd find that the young people basically saw these devices and they saw the mouse, and they would take the mouse apart and they'd start playing with the ball. It was a ball to play with. They had no idea how to use the internet, and nobody ever explained it to them. And I can think of there are other anecdotes along that line, and I won't go into them. They're amusing and they're instructive, but I think where it leads to, in my mind, is a question: in this development of these tools and these services and products, do you have on the team people who are actually in these rural areas expressing directly what their needs are, as opposed to having this top-down vision of, oh, you need this and we're going to produce it for you? And I mean, I think it may be a deep problem.
Who wants to take that?
Yeah, I can give an answer to that one. So yeah, I think talking to the end users is crucial. So every workshop that we do with companies, we start with minimum 2 days talking to the farmers, whether it's farmers, field agents, warehouse managers, whoever it is in the supply chain, to try and really understand their digital literacy levels, their wants, their needs, their problems, and so on. And of course, we also leverage local colleagues or local staff of the company, and we help them design for them. So it's not me designing the solution; it's me helping the company to design for these end users. And then we always encourage the companies to, like, even if they don't have a lot of resources for in-house designers and so on, to just put the solution in the hands of the end user, because there's always a lot of assumptions that you will have that turn out to be not true. So maybe you design a first version of the app, you go to the farmer and you see how they use it for the first time. You realize that they're outside, the sun is shining on the screen, they have a cracked screen and they cannot read anything that's on the app, and you immediately understand why it's not going to work out. So even just putting the solution in the hands of the farmer, even when the product is a very early stage, is something that can save a lot of costs later on. So it's very important. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please, if I might add. I think that something very interesting from that point of view is a study that JPAL, so Poverty Action Lab, has released maybe about a year ago. And so first, 100% digital is hardly going to work. So then you need to have a bundle of services. As I say, we call it hybrid mode, like pedagogical mode. So you need in-person training, including explaining how to use the device. and also maybe at some point some nudges. Okay, oh, you see, we learned that, you can find it here. You learn that, you can find it here. These kind of things. So really include that in a hybrid pedagogical mode. Second is to bring adapted. So we mentioned that already. Like maybe you have to change your roadmap. In Sri Lanka, at some point, we had difficulties of digital adoption, so we changed our roadmap and we included some price notifications so that farmers can get access to price every day. And that is an incentive because, of course, if you know better what your livelihood is going to depend from, you have a tendency to get access to it.
Price by market too, because if you go from village A to village B, it
Yeah.
may be one price, but if you go to village C, it's a different price.
Yeah, that's why we built a local buyer app so that local buyers can inform the farmers of the price they have for this week or for this day. So timely information. That's the second learning from this JPAL, so that you send information that are adapted to farmers at the right time, not only a general idea that you should be taking care about producing cycles. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to send it. And the third thing is that use of social networks and champion farmers is probably the most efficient way, because farmers tend to be attached to what is working in their village, and so that's a very interesting study to answer your question.
Just to add two very quick ones, and we'll go to the next question. So I'm with you. I've seen in dairy co-ops in Malawi, desktop computers used as desk dividers between people collecting the milk. It doesn't have electricity, or they've got something for the milk churn. It's badged up with various donor stickers on there. But so I've seen it. But then in Sri Lanka, we were looking again at dairy in Sri Lanka, looking at whether there was an opportunity to digitize payments there, and there wasn't really, because the farmers are milking the cows every day. They're going to the collection center every day, twice a day, and so there's always a contact between them and the company. So they are always going there, so it's very easy for them to receive cash payments. It wasn't like people were having to travel long distances to make those payments, and there wasn't really an opportunity for digitization. And then with cashew in Tanzania, we were looking at some co-ops there and talking about, is there an opportunity for advisory? Is there more information that farmers need? And the co-op didn't really, because they're selling to, it's kind of a controlled crop over there. There wasn't really an incentive for the co-op to increase production. And so the management of the co-op, there was no sort of business sense for them to be investing in a system or creating digitalization, because they weren't under pressure for their farmers to do more. And so, it's finding the right opportunity and not, as you say, doing this push down, which is why we do these product iteration workshops, to understand from the floor what's happening. Okay, let's go, if we start from the back and work forward. The gentleman in the blue blazer. I think it's blue. 2 seconds, just wait for this chap. Okay.
Okay, thanks for all the discussion and the information and everything that you just discussed. I was wondering, how do you deal with the fragmentation of both the problems? You have a huge amount of problems to solve, and also the fragmentation of the solution. It was mentioned before that, like, having different products, different solutions that do not interact with each other is a problem in general all over the world. How do you deal with that in this kind of contexts?
Yeah, sure. So I think for a lot of the companies, especially the ones that have founders that have a tech background, they try to maximize, they try to get everything out of the technology that they provide, right? So for example, there's one cohort member And they provide like an Internet of Things solution for poultry farmers. So they put like sensors in the pens, and they measure the temperature, the humidity, and then they try to figure out what is everything we can do with this data. And then they have a farm management app, and you open it and you see like 10 different key features that you can use, and they think like, you know, if we showcase how many things this technology can do, the user is probably going to be very impressed by it, and yeah, more features is more value, right? But then, you know, for a lot of the farmers, once they open an app and they see so many features, they're like, okay, they get confused, they might be a bit overwhelmed, and they're not going to use it. And in many cases, there's only 2 or 3 key features that really solves a problem for that farmer. So what we do is we go to the farmers, we do deep dive interviews, so to say, and we really try to figure out what is the problem that this farmer is having and what is the technology actually solving for them. And then usually a lot of the features are not solving the core problem. I'm not saying they're not useful or we shouldn't put them on the app, but usually there's like 2 or 3 key things that the farmer really needs. And then we try to focus the app on those kind of core solutions. And it doesn't mean that we throw out all of the other stuff. We can still keep it in there. But one thing that we sometimes do is we call it progressive disclosure. So you know, we focus on 1 or 2 key features. We let the farmer use the app and really experience the value of that app. And once the farmer is more accustomed to the app and they understand how it works, we start to nudge them towards other features like, oh, have you tried this? Did you know you can also do this? And that way we create kind of a more structured learning pathway for the farmer rather than throwing everything at them at once. Yeah.
No, sorry, and if I may say to complement what Johan was mentioning, this is where having a clear, what we call TOC, but impact roadmap helps. Where do you want to land? If the feature is contributing to that, then good, you keep it. But if it's not because you can do it from a technical perspective, because you have the data, etc., that you should do it if it's not contributing to the impact you are trying to achieve.
Yeah, and just to add, this sensor or this device is very low power. One of the metrics is temperature. So there's an alarm going off, it's too hot. But in order, these pens are massive. You'd need a fan the size of this room to cool it down. You know, and this thing's off grid. So why are you giving the temperature? To some extent, you know, it's which features can you actually make a change with? So sorry, we're a little bit pressed for time, but there was a question, I think, just or 2 questions in the row in front, or the gentleman in the salmon, and then the lady next to him.
Thank you a lot for the panel discussion. I'm from Armenia, and we're the tech person that we're building a farm productivity solution for Armenia. And Armenia is very much not digitalized in a way, and we were having a lot of problems, like throwing a lot of features to them and seeing their problem with the government and the trust between the farmers. But one of the things I would like to ask, and what we're doing here, we're trying to collect this data manually right now. And that takes a lot of time for us and a lot of stress for the farmers. I wanted to know more of, like, I don't know, maybe an opinion of how you streamlined the data collection process. That is a manual process, and then try to give it back to the farmers and the end users to actually make them see the impact, and at the same time understand that the information that they see, it's their own information. It's not just created out of the world, because like they don't have the literacy to understand how it's connected, how the paper can go to the phone and just make a picture for them.
Yeah, so actually, I think a lot of the cohort members, they also collect a lot of the data still manually, and I think. So a lot of the cohort members, they actually work with field agents, and the field agents, they register farmers and they collect a lot of data manually. And for them, one of the most important features is that they can collect that data on the phone offline, and that it auto syncs whenever they're at a point with connectivity. So I think this is one of the most important features for them, to enable the app to work offline and always upload the data whenever there's a connection. So I don't know whether that's a possibility, for example, that you try to collect a lot of data, or you enable the app to work in an offline manner, and you enable this auto-sync feature. Yeah, I think that's one of the core things. And then they try to automate where possible. So if they have certain types of hardware that they can sync automatically to the device, that's ideal. I don't know exactly which kind of technology or which kind of systems they use for that. I could ask them, but yeah, I think the offline functionality is very important for almost all of the cohort members. Yeah.
If I might add, so there are also some things that you can do is like making a link with buyers. So what we have developed is like double confirmation, so that when they sell to a special buyer, we can register data, and so that the farmers at some point, we are not there yet, we are developing it with the University of South California, can get access to its own P&L view. So for them, if you need their time to collect data, they need to have an interest. So it can be either better farm management, it can be maybe if you need some, you have a carbon credit program for a nature-based solution, you collect data, they need to get something out of it. Some incentive, personal incentive, maybe some community investments, but at some point you need to be aware that people, no one likes reporting. You hate it, I hate it, everyone hates it. So you need to have an interest.
Yeah. I'm afraid I'm getting the alert that we're going to have to exit the room. So these guys, I'm sure, can hang around for a few minutes if you've got questions for them. Just one quick response, but let's talk afterwards. Is instant reward. So when one of the big issues is getting people to input data into this app. So when they have put data in, then reward them with something. Like if it's not, we're not talking cash or monetary, but in terms of, you've leveled up, or, kind of gamify it a little bit, or show where they are in a range of whether or not they're performing well as a dairy farmer or whatever type of farmer. But rather than it just being a sinkhole of data where they put it in, but nothing happens, right? And then the other one was, in terms of registration, is ask for what you really need at the start, but then there's always time. You can always add more information in later. And so we've done this. There was a chap talking yesterday, the CEO of Dialogue Axiata, about their Govi Mitheru service, where we stripped down the registration process, and then as people were using it, we could see there were interested users. So let's start now pulling more data from them and asking more questions further down the user journey. Okay, I'm really sorry. If you do have questions, then please try and grab these guys before they run away. But before you run away, can you just join me in thanking Christian, Elise, Johan, and Raphael for joining us today? Thank you, guys. Thank you all for coming.